Let us start with ecosystem. Today, we are zooming out to look at the big picture of nature. Think of an ecosystem as a functional unit of our planet. It is not just a collection of plants and animals. It is a theater where living organisms interact, not just with each other, but with their physical surroundings like air, water, and soil. One of the most fascinating things about ecosystems is their scale. An ecosystem can be as tiny as a single pond in your backyard, or it can be as vast as the Amazon rainforest or the Pacific Ocean. In fact, many ecologists view the entire biosphere, the sum of all life on the earth, as a one giant global ecosystem. Because the global ecosystem is so complex, we simplify it into two main neighborhoods. One is terrestrial, which is land based. Think of forests, sun drenched grasslands, or dry deserts. Second is aquatic, which is water based. This includes everything from lakes and wetlands to rushing rivers and salty estuaries. Not all ecosystems are natural. We also have a man-made ecosystems like the cornfields of a farm or the glass-walled aquarium in your living room. To understand how these ecosystems stay alive, we look at four key processes. One is productivity. This is the beginning. It is how energy, usually from the sun, is captured by the plants to create organic matter. Two is energy flow. This is the movement of energy. Energy moves through food chains and food webs as one organism eats another. Three is nutrient cycling. Nature is the ultimate recycler. Nutrients move from the soil through plants and animals and eventually come back to the soil. Four is loss. No system is 100% efficient. Eventually, energy is lost as heat and matter is broken down through degradation. In short, an ecosystem is a web of relationships. By studying the flows of energy and cycles of nutrients, we can see how every living thing, from the smallest bacteria to the tallest tree, is interconnected in this beautiful, complex system. Now let us see ecosystem structure and function. The players in nature include the abiotic and the biotic. The abiotic are non-living things like sunlight and soil. The biotic things are living organisms. Now we look at how these players interact. When you combine the living and the non-living, you get a unique physical structure called ecosystem. Every ecosystem has its own fingerprint based on the species that live there, which we call it as species composition. Think of an ecosystem like a multi-story building. This is what we call stratification, that is, the vertical layering of different species. In a forest, you have the penthouse, the tall trees forming the canopy, the middle floors populated by shrubs, the ground floor where herbs and grasses live. Each layer provides a specific home for specific creatures. To understand how an ecosystem actually works, we look at four key processes. One is productivity, that is, how much food or energy is created by the plants. Two is decomposition, that is, how dead matter is broken down. Three is energy flow, that is, how power moves from one creature to another. 4 is nutrient cycling. Here, how minerals are reused over and over. To see these 4 processes in action, let's look at a simple pond. It is a perfect self-sustaining world in a small space. The foundation is the water, the dissolved minerals, and the rich soil at the bottom. The battery that powers it all is the sun, which regulates the temperature and pace of life. It has the producers. They are autotrophs. They are the energy makers, like tiny floating phytoplankton, algae, and plants growing along the edges. They turn sunlight into organic food. It also has the consumers. They are heterotrophs. They include zooplankton and fish that eat the producers. It has decomposers at the very bottom, like bacteria and fungi, wait to break down waste and dead matter. In our pond, we see a beautiful cycle. The producers turn inorganic minerals into organic life using the sun. The consumers eat the producers. When things die, the decomposers turn them back into inorganic minerals to be used by the plants again. But there is one big difference between minerals and energy. Minerals are recycled in a circle. Energy is a one-way street. It moves upward through the food chain, and at every step, some of it is lost as heat. This is why ecosystems need a constant supply of sunlight to keep the engine running. Nature is the ultimate economy. It produces, consumes, decays, and recycles, all powered by the sun, with nothing going to waste except for the heat that radiates back into the atmosphere. Let us discuss about productivity. We see how much solar energy plants are capturing and turning into living matter or biomass. We define primary production as the weight of organic matter created in a certain area over a certain time. We measure it by weight, that is gram per meter square, or by energy, that is kilocalories per meter square. When we talk about the speed of this production over a year, we call it as productivity, expressed as gram per meter square per year. This allows us to compare different ecosystems like a lush jungle versus a dry desert. To understand how energy is actually used, let us use a simple business equation. One is gross primary productivity. It is like the total income. This is the total amount of energy the plants capture through photosynthesis. It is the gross pay before any deductions. Next is respiration. This is the cost of living. Plants are living things. They need to breathe and stay alive. They use up a significant portion of that captured energy just to maintain themselves. This is the respiration loss. Next is net primary productivity. It is the take home pay. This is the most important number. When you subtract the energy that plant uses for the itself from the total it captured, you get the net. So, gross primary productivity minus respiratory loss will be equal to net primary productivity. Net primary productivity is the actual food left over for everyone else, like the herbivores, the decomposers, and eventually us. Once the plants have done their job, the animals take over. Secondary productivity is simply the rate at which consumers like cows, lions, or humans turn the plant matter they eat into their own new body mass. Why productivity varies? A plant's ability to produce depends on the specific plant species, availability of sunlight, temperature, and moisture, how many nutrients are available in the soil. Here is a staggering fact to wrap up your head around. The entire earth produces about 170 billion tons of organic matter a year. The land produces 115 billion tons. The oceans, despite covering 70% of the earth's surface, they only produce 55 billion tons. Why is ocean productivity is so low? It is mainly because of light and nutrients. In the deep ocean, sunlight can't reach very far, and vital nutrients often sink to the dark bottom far away from the plants, that is, phytoplankton, that need them at the surface. On land, plants have easier access to both intense sun and small nutrients. Now let us see about decomposition. Imagine a forest floor. It is covered with fallen leaves, snapped twigs, and perhaps the remains of a small animal. If these things never disappeared, the world would be buried in trash within years. But nature as a cleanup crew. You have likely heard the earthworm called the farmer's friend. This is not just because they are hardworking, it is because they turn dead waste into life giving soil. The entire process is called decomposition. Before we talk about the how, we need the what. In the world of biology, dead organic matter containing leaves, bark, flowers, and even animal waste is called detritus. Think of detritus as the raw fuel that powers the decomposition engine. Decomposition is not just one thing, it is a five-step symphony. While these steps often happen at the same time, we can break them down into a logical flow. One is fragmentation. This is the physical breakdown. Tetrivores, like our friend the earthworm, eat the detritus and poop it out as smaller particles. They are the shredders of the forest. Second is leaching. When it rains, water flows through the shredded waste. Leaching is when water soluble nutrients dissolve and sink deep into the soil. Sometimes they sink so deep they become trapped as a salts. Third is catabolism. This is the chemical breakdown. Bacteria and fungi release powerful enzymes that dissolve the remaining waste into simple inorganic substances. Fourth is humification. This creates humus. Humus is a dark, nutrient rich superstuff. It is very stable, resists further rot, and acts like a massive battery or reservoir for nutrients. Fifth is mineralization. Finally, specific microbes finish the job. They break down the humus to release the final inorganic nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus back into the soil for plants to drink up. Now, not all decomposition happens at the same speed. It depends on two main things: what is being eaten and where it is happening. If the waste is full of lignin, that is woodiness, or chitin, crunchy insect shells, The process is slow. If the waste is rich in nitrogen or sugars, decomposers feast quickly. Decomposition loves a warm and moist environment. It hates the cold and it hates a lack of oxygen, that is, anaerobiosis. If it is too cold or there is no air, decomposition stops and dead stuff just piles up. Now let us discuss about energy flow. For almost every ecosystem on our planet, from the tallest rainforest to the smallest garden, that fuel comes from one place, the sun. Interestingly, plants are incredibly picky eaters. Less than 50% of the sunlight hitting the earth is even usable for them. We call this photosynthetically active radiation or PAR. Out of that PAR, plants only capture a tiny fraction, about 2 to 10%. Yet, the tiny slice of energy is what powers every single creature on Earth. Energy flow is not random. It follows the strict laws of physics, that is, the laws of thermodynamics. The first law: energy is unidirectional. It flows from the sun to the producers, then to the consumers, and it does not go backward. The second law is ecosystems are constantly fighting disorder, that is, entropy. To stay organized and alive, organisms need a constant, fresh supply of energy because every time energy moves, some is lost as heat. We categorize organisms by their trophic level, basically, their spot on the food ladder. 1. Producers. They are at first trophic level. These are the autotrophs like green plants, algae, and phytoplankton. They trap the sun's energy. Next is consumers. They are heterotrophs. These are animals that cannot make their own food. There are primary consumers. These are herbivores like insects, birds, or mollusks that eat plants directly. Secondary and tertiary consumers. These are the carnivores that eat the herbivores. Energy travels through two main types of chains. One is the grazing food chain or GFC. This is the classic grass to goat, goat to man sequence. In aquatic environments, oceans and lakes, this is the main way energy moves. Next is the detritus food chain. This starts with death. When an organism dies, its energy does not just vanish, it becomes detritus. Decomposers like fungi and bacteria break this down. In terrestrial ecosystems, much more energy actually flows through this dead matter chain than the grazing one. These chains are not isolated, they tangle together to form a food web. An omnivore like a cow or a human might eat from both chains at once. Now let us see about the 10% rule. Why don't we see food chains with 20 levels? Because of a biological tax. As energy moves from one level to the next, only 10% is actually passed on. The rest is lost as heat or used up for the organism's own survival. This is the 10% law because the energy pot gets 90% smaller at every step. Most food chains can only support 4 to 5 levels before the energy simply runs out. At any given moment, each level has a certain amount of living material, which we call the standing crop. We measure this as a biomass. While you can weigh it fresh, scientists prefer dry weight. Why? Because water weight fluctuates constantly. but a dry weight tells you exactly how much biological fuel is actually there. Now let us discuss about ecological pyramids. Think of a classic pyramid like the one in Egypt. It has a broad, sturdy base that tapers to a narrow point at the top. In ecology, we use this exact shape to visualize the relationships between different living things. At the base of every pyramid, you have the producers, that is, the plants. As you move up towards the apex, you find the top level predators. We measure these relationships in three ways: numbers, biomass, and energy. Before we look at these shapes, we must understand one rule. A trophic level is a job description, not a species name. Take a sparrow. When it eats a seed, it is a primary consumer, that is, it is at level 2. When that same sparrow eats a worm, it is a secondary consumer, that it is at level 3. To build an accurate pyramid, we have to count every organism at that level, regardless of their species. Now, let us see the three types of pyramids. First is the pyramid of numbers. This simply counts how many. In most cases, this is upright. For example, in a grassland, you need millions of blades of grass to support a few thousand grasshoppers, which in turn support a few dozen birds. There is an exception to this. Imagine one massive oak tree. That is one producer, but it can host thousands of insects. In this case, the base is tiny and the middle is huge. This is an inverted pyramid. Second is the pyramid of biomass. This measures the total weight of living tissue. Usually, this is also upright. That is, the total weight of all the plants on earth far outweighs the animals. There is a paradox in the sea. In the ocean, the pyramid of biomass is often inverted. You have a small mass of phytoplankton supporting a huge mass of fish. How? Because phytoplankton reproduce and die so incredibly fast that even a small amount can feed a larger weight of slow growing fish over time. Third is the pyramid of energy. This is the most important one. The pyramid of energy is always upright. It can never be inverted. Why? Because of laws of physics. As energy moves from one level to the next, much of it is lost as heat. There is always more energy available at the bottom than at the top. One thing we have to understand is, as helpful as these pyramids are, they are not perfect. They are simplified models of a messy world. Pyramids struggle to show species like humans or sparrows that exist in more than one level at once. Pyramids assume a simple, straight food chain, but nature is actually a complex, tangled food web. Perhaps the biggest flaw is that saprotrophs, that is, decomposers like fungi and bacteria, are not given a spot on the pyramid at all, even though they are vital for recycling the entire system.